Are you ready for liftoff? Don't miss Canada's #1 cannabis conference and trade show, Lift & Co Expo, May 12th through the 15th at the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. Level up your industry intel at Lift & Co's business conference, plus connect with movers and shakers from across the cannabis industry and preview new products and services from 250 exhibitors. Plus, everyone loves Lift & Co Expo prizes, live music, and more. For tickets, visit liftexpo.ca. That's liftexpo.ca.
We identified last year that the food and beverage industry and the edibles industry, alongside with nutraceuticals, was one of the highest growth industries in cannabis. And JustCbd is a company that has been operating at a very high level. They delivered $28 million in revenue in 2020. They delivered $7 million in EBITDA, extremely profitable, and have developed a very robust distribution network. As you mentioned, 14,000 distribution points.
From the PodConx studios, high in the Rockies at the beautiful Beaver Creek Resort, it's the Raising Cannabis Capital Show.
Today on MJ Bulls, we are joined by Luis Marchan, the CEO of Flora-Growth Corp. Luis, welcome to back to the show.
Dan, thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, it's great to have you back. For our listeners that missed our previous episode, Flora-Growth Corp is a publicly traded, internationally focused cannabis company. And today I want to talk about 4 things. I want to talk about your cultivation, distribution, brands, and CBD, which is a lot to cover in 10 minutes. So let's jump right into it. Unlike so many cannabis companies that are looking for a quick hit, your company's content on playing the long game. Your Colombian cultivation facility is one of the largest in the world. What advantage does that give you today? But more importantly, what advantage will that give you in the years coming down the road?
Yeah, Dan, I think it's important to highlight that the company's strategy is one that does focus on the long term and the potential that cannabis will have on the global scale. We firmly believe that cannabis will bring forth a movement towards plant-based alternatives that will come into the mainstream. And having a cultivation facility out of Colombia where we're growing cannabis at one of the lowest production costs in the world in an outdoor organic way will be a competitive advantage into the future. That is also blended with the execution that we have been able to achieve in such a short amount of time in terms of revenues and path to profitability.
Yeah, I think if you take that even one step further, and just if we have to connect the dots for our listeners, as United States laws change and the world's laws change, this product will become commoditized, and it'll just keep getting less and less expensive. And companies like yours that are growing it in, what do you have, like 12 hours of sunlight year round in Colombia, you're going to have a huge advantage.
Absolutely, Dan. And I think our strategy is a diverse strategy. From that perspective, from the plant and derivatives perspective, you're absolutely right. The global trade and barriers coming down will boil down to who can grow flower at a very high quality of one of the lowest production costs. And we have that advantage. We have seen just today the House passed once again the MORE Act. We expect movement towards decriminalization and federalization in the US, which will then set off the dominoes on a global scale. And those companies that have distribution, companies that have the know-how, that are able to grow with the incredible advantages that growing alongside the equator, like being in a seasonless environment, having natural resources that are very low cost or almost free, and having a skilled agricultural labor that is significantly less expensive and more knowledgeable about growing the cannabis plant will play a role into being a global market leader.
I know you're onto something. And you mentioned distribution, and you've also created a very extensive global distribution network. What countries are your products currently sold in?
We're currently distributing our products in over 12 countries internationally. They include, of course, the United States, which represents almost 50% of the global legal cannabis trade. But we're also in Mexico distributing major distributors like Walmart.com. We are in Costa Rica, expanding into Panama, of course, Colombia. We have distribution agreements with Australia, Israel, and Germany, and selling our products as well in Europe, in England, and France, amongst many others.
Jeez. And you have such a diverse portfolio of brands. I mean, you cover everything from food and beverage to skincare to hardware, loungewear, and now CBD. Talk about some of the benefits of having such a diverse portfolio of products.
We learned very quickly that it's very important that you focus on the long term, and that long term is the plant. We want to make sure that we grow the best cannabis in an organic, natural way at one of the lowest production costs in the world. But we also want to unlock the potential for revenues that the cannabis industry and its molecules can present. And those revenues come in various different industries. And for that reason, we implemented a strategy that is focused on developing brands and products across multiple industries that have different barriers of entry and also engage with different margins. Some of them are incredibly healthy margins. For that reason, we are in topicals, we are in edibles, we also are in nutraceuticals, as well as some other related industries such as textiles. Yeah. This strategy allows us to first activate revenues early on. Second, ensure that we have a path to profitability over the short term. And then third, expand distribution at a far rapid scale that we would if we were only focusing on the plant and its derivatives.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a solid strategy, and it also gives you an outlet for all of your product. You always have some of your own brands that you can sell your own products to.
Exactly. And this is part of the foundational priorities and our core values in our companies. Not only we are fulfilling our commitment to give access to plant-based wellness alternatives to our consumers, but we're also maximizing the yield of the entire plant. As you probably know, Dan, only 20 to 40% of the cannabis plant is utilized during the extraction process. That balance, that 60%, can be utilized for a multitude of products and related industries. And by taking a holistic approach, we're able to maximize the return on investment and maximize the yield of the plant.
Yeah, it's just great. Well, over the past few months, you've made a lot of acquisitions, including JustCbd, which is a large U.S. company with, I guess I got this right, 14,000 distribution points across the United States and internationally. Why was this such an important acquisition?
It's very important, Dan, and this is one of the elements that makes us incredibly proud in our company, that you remain very vigilant with regards to changes of the industry and to companies that are operating at a very high level. This industry is ever changing from a regulatory standpoint, from the ability to enter certain markets. And we quickly identified last year that the food and beverage industry and the edibles industry, alongside with nutraceuticals, was one of the highest growth industries in cannabis. And JustCbd is a company that has been operating at a very high level. They delivered $28 million in revenue in 2020. They delivered $7 million in EBITDA, extremely profitable, and have developed a very robust distribution network. As you mentioned, 14,000 distribution points.
At Maverick Public Relations, growing your influence is their specialty. MPR works with remarkable companies in the cannabis industry to deliver exceptional results. Experience big agency expertise and outstanding client service delivered by seasoned and knowledgeable experts. Connect with Maverick PR today and move your company to the next level. Visit them at www.themaverickpr.com. That's themaverickpr.com.
There were also other elements of the transaction that were incredibly attractive to us, like its leader, Hussein Rakin, who is an incredible, powerful, up-and-coming leader in the cannabis industry. He was recognized by Forbes for being one of the 30 under 30 most exciting executives in the United States. And he has been able to build a complete powerhouse, a leading brand in the CBD space in just 5 years. So we're bringing that know-how, we're bringing exceptional leadership, we're bringing distribution, and we are entering an industry that is presenting the fastest growth in the cannabis space. So for all those reasons, we felt this was a great move for our company.
You mentioned the distribution aspect about that. And I have a theory. I'm going to just bounce this off you. I mentioned early on that you're publicly traded, but I didn't mention that you're listed on the NASDAQ. And for their listeners that aren't aware of this, the NASDAQ doesn't accept companies that violate any U.S. law. So any company that sells THC in the United States, they can't get listed on the NASDAQ. Back to the idea of you playing the long game, is it going to be important that you've established this whole distribution network in the United States? When the laws changed, you already have the distribution in place. Did that influence your decision at all?
Yes, 100%, Dan. You're absolutely right. We're incredibly transparent about our strategy because we believe there's room for many players in the industry to grow and take advantage of the benefits that the industry will bring forth. But for us, we have been very clear about our M&A strategies, people, revenues, and distribution. Revenues are very important because they show that a company is actually executing on its promise. And this industry had been plagued with potential, but not with execution. So companies that do that are already on the right side of the fence. But distribution is very meaningful for what you mentioned. If you have already an established pipeline for all of your products, when the right time comes, you're going to be able to add the margin-rich products, the psychoactive products, and perhaps all of those other categories that are now illegal, but we know it's a matter of time, into that already existing distribution network and enjoy what we're probably going to call a first mover advantage on that side.
Wow. And plus, you're already on the NASDAQ. So people are going to be able to buy your stock, or they could buy it now. And I'm going to have all of Luis's information and all of Flora Growth's information in the show notes, including their stock information. So, I mean, I don't know what more information anybody needs after this interview, but Luis, it is always a pleasure to have you on the show. And I can't wait to have you on again because it's always exciting. Thanks for doing this today.
Thank you, Dan. It's my pleasure. And of course, I cannot walk away without reminding our listeners, our ticker is FLGC. We're listed under NASDAQ. And of course, all the pertinent information will be shared by you, Dan. But it's a great pleasure.
Hi, I'm Gary, and I invite you to discover the Cannabis Podcast, a bi-weekly podcast focused on a Canadian's cannabis culture. I would be the Canadian, and my cannabis passion and culture has been building for 5 decades. I share that passion for this wonderful plant in every episode, through conversations with cannabis advocates and enthusiasts, stories about the ever-changing legal environment, and some hands-on testing of product in a segment I call Cultivar Corner. The Cannabis Podcast, a Canadian's cannabis culture, one toke at a time.